Saelah felt exhausted but oddly refreshed. 8 days. Her heat cycle had lasted 8 days. She remembered all of the last few days as the time between the waves were longer, but only parts of the first few. Only the parts where she was lucid, which weren't too many. However, she knew her outfits had taken good care of her. She was still sore in the best way. Now that she was back at her own apartment, in her own bed, she missed their combined scents. Sure, they'd scented her blanket for her when they brought her home, but that was 2 days ago, and while the scent was still there, it wasn't as heavy. She wasn't as surrounded by them as she'd gotten used to being. She glanced at the clock and found that it was 10:15 in the morning. She'd be getting back to work tomorrow. Thankfully, Denny had access to her email, and she kept the email addresses for her clients in a folder. He'd emailed stating she'd be out for a medical emergency and then sent her out an office message. She sent an email last night that she'd be back in the office tomorrow. Getting out of bed, she headed into the bathroom to freshen up, then went into the kitchen to make herself something for breakfast. She was sure to be quiet. Denny's door was closed, and she was sure he'd probably just gone to bed. Saelah made some avocado toast and ate it at the counter. Then she washed the dishes and opened the medicine drawer. Denny had suggested she not go back on suppressants, at least not for a month or two, and she'd agreed. However, she decided to continue taking the birth control he'd been kind enough to give for her while she was in heat. For the first few days, Kento had ensured she took it in her moments of lucidity. After that, she remembered to take it on her own. In all honesty, she wasn't sure if she would go back on suppressants. She'd already stopped using the extra strength scent blockers, and if she went back on them and the delivery didn't come again in time, she could be back in the same boat. Now that she was in a place where she wasn't looked at like she was a freak of nature, and she had potential mates to help her through it, Saelah would much rather have a heat cycle she could track that lasted a normal amount of time than to be taken by surprise and spend the majority of a week in bed. Not that she had any real complaints because they made sure she got everything she needed, but tracking her cycle meant letting her clients know ahead of time when she'd be out. Going back into the bedroom, she grabbed her phone off the nightstand. She was sure there would be a few messages in their group chat. That was how it usually went, and since they brought her back home after her heat, there were a few more than usual waiting on her when she checked her phone the past mornings. As she suspected, she had several messages, and Saelah responded to them as she went back into the living room. She turned on the television and found a drama to watch as she lounged on the couch. She hadn't realized several hours had gone by with her getting sucked into each episode until the doorbell rang. Saelah paused the show, springing up from the couch and hurrying to the door. She didn't want the noise to wake her friend. She opened the door without checking who it was and found Suguru on the other side. "Hey Suguru, what are you doing here?" "Hey little one, I thought I could come on my lunch break and we could eat together," he replied, holding up the bag. But if this is a bad time, she figured he likely thought that from the way she'd opened the door. She smiled at him. "No, it's fine. Come in. Denny worked last night, so he's sleeping. I should have called." He removed his shoes and put on his slippers. "It's okay. I don't mind you stopping by." "How's work?" she asked as they sat at the low table in the living room. "It's good. I'm working on a few different pieces. Did you have a lot to catch up on?" Saelah knew that they'd taken a few days off to help her while she was in heat, then rotated the following days since Satoru's schedule was more flexible than the others. "Nothing I can't handle," Suguru responded as he removed the food and drinks from the bag. "Have you eaten today?" She nodded. "I had a light breakfast. My appetite is still a little off from my heat, but it's slowly returning to normal. I thought that might be the case, so I wanted to bring you something that wasn't too heavy." They talked while they ate and made plans for the following Monday since she was going to a poker game Satoru hosted with them that Saturday. Saelah was looking forward to it since it'd been a while since she'd gone on a date and it was just the two of them, with any of them. She didn't mind their group dates and enjoyed spending time with them regardless of how, but she also liked the intimacy of a one-on-one date with them. Once they finished eating, they cleaned up and threw away the trash, and before Suguru could head for the door, she grabbed his wrist. "Before you go, will you do something for me?" "Of course, baby," he replied, and a surge ran down her spine as her mind flashed back to him calling her that while he was inside her. Saelah knew that any time she heard one of them say it now, the images would play in her mind. She pulled him down the hallway to her bedroom. She closed the door as he raised an eyebrow. "Release your pheromones," she requested. They both knew it was going to be strong, and his scent would last for a few days. Even when the door opened, it would still sit heavy in her room. That was fine with her. It was what she wanted. The blanket they scented for her was not doing the trick. Suguru did as she requested, and soon her room was filled with his delicious mix of patchouli and leather. Saelah couldn't help but take a deep breath in. She draped her arms over his shoulders and rose onto her toes. "Thank you," she said before giving him a soft kiss. She felt more at ease now that one of their scents was taking up her bedroom, which, for all intents and purposes, would now be her nest. "You don't have to thank me." He ran his thumb over her cheek before giving her another kiss. "I should get going. I have 2 pieces to package for pickup in a couple of hours." She refrained from pouting because she'd been with him for 8 days straight. With the way she felt, you would think they'd been apart for 2 months instead of 2 days. "Okay, text me when you get home." "Of course, little one." They exited her room and she closed the door behind them, wanting to trap the scent inside. Saelah walked him to the front door, and they said their goodbyes before she returned to the couch and resumed the episode she was watching. Suguru made sure the delivery company loaded the dresser with care, even though it was packaged securely. He didn't want anything to happen to it on the way to the customers. They strapped it down so it wouldn't sway as they drove, then gave him the receipt of pickup. He went back inside where Haruta stood behind the counter reading a comic book. The young beta looked up when he entered. "I've been meaning to ask. You didn't come in for almost a week. Were you in rut? Isn't it too early?" Suguru raised a brow at him. "It took you 4 days to muster up the courage to ask that." "Not really. I was trying to respect your privacy, but then I decided I wanted to know," he replied with a shrug. "No, I wasn't in rut." "Was your girlfriend in heat then?" Haruta asked. Suguru ignored him going into the workroom. "She was, wasn't she? 5 days. That's a long heat, isn't it?" "Good thing your rut isn't but a few days. She might be exhausted when it comes around. It's next month, right?" "If you have time to be this nosy, then you can dust all the shelves, merchandise, and sweep the floor," Suguru responded. Fine. I know when I've asked too many questions." Suguru refrained from snorting because no, the young man did not know when he'd asked too many questions, and often came back to ask more once sent on his way. However, he tolerated most of them. He was a good kid, if not far too curious, working part-time while he was in his second year of university. The last thing he would ever do was tell Haruta that he was right, and that he had been helping Saelah through her heat. Once he was alone, he sat at the drafting table to work on a design. Haruta had also been wrong. Suguru wasn't planning on asking Saelah for help with his rut. He knew himself well enough, and he tended to be too rough, losing control. He'd seen the aftermath of his ruts. That was why he normally hired a service to match him with someone. However, he would grit his way through it solo, because he wouldn't put her through that, wouldn't risk hurting her. He was sure that had it just been the two of them during her heat, his rut would have come early, but having other alpha pheromones around him, when it was alphas he trusted, kept that from happening. Suguru was sure it was the same for the other two as well. His phone vibrated, and he pulled it from his pocket to check it. There was a message in his group chat with Satoru and Kento. He told them a couple of hours ago when he left Saelah that they should go by and sent her blanket for her. He knew she'd gotten used to their scent surrounding her when she'd asked him to release his pheromones in her bedroom. Suguru assumed she would want all 3 of them, and he had advised the other 2 to stop by. Kento was going once he left the office, and Satoru before he went in for the evening. The 2 visits might overlap. Suguru continued working on his current design. This customer wanted several pieces from him: an entry table, a side table, nightstands, and a dresser. It had been a while since he'd made so many pieces for one client, but he was looking forward to it, especially since they'd given him creative liberty as long as the finishing matched the color scheme of the rooms they were going in. He worked on the designs until it was time to close for the day. He ensured everything was locked up and headed towards the train station. Once home, he headed to his bathroom and started the shower. He undressed and stepped inside, letting the hot water stream over his skin before washing himself and then his hair. When he stepped out, he wrapped a towel around his waist and ran another over his hair. He ran a comb through it as he blow-dried it, pulled it up into a bun, then went into his bedroom. He slipped on a pair of boxer shorts, then sweatpants, and headed into the kitchen. Suguru was halfway through making dinner when he heard his phone ringing. He turned the fire down and went into his bedroom to retrieve it from where he tossed it onto the bed. Satoru's name flashed across the screen. "What's up, Satoru?" he asked, placing the phone on speaker. "Nothing. I'm headed to Saelah's and I have a question." "What is it?" "Do you plan to ask her to help you through your rut when it comes?" "I don't. You know how I get, and I don't want to run the risk of hurting her," Suguru replied, returning to cooking. "You don't plan on calling the service, do you?" Satoru inquired skeptically. "Of course not. I'll write it out solo. It won't be the first time I've done it." Suguru was courting Saelah. The last thing he'd ever do was have the agency he used sometimes send him someone. When he was younger, sure, he might have done something like that, but not now. "Why are you asking?" "I'm going to ask her to help me through mine, but yours is first, and I wanted to wait until you asked if you were going to." He nodded, even though Satoru couldn't see him. Their ruts were a month apart, and then Kento started 5 weeks after Satoru. If they happened to be writing it out solo, then they would check on one another during them. "Go for it," Suguru said. "Alright, but at some point you'll have to ask her, or at least tell her why you're not. Mating is the goal, and if you do, but never want her to help you through a rut, she might feel some type of way about it. It might make her wary." Satoru had a point, and it wasn't like Suguru didn't plan on telling her. There was just no need for him to right now. He could go through a few rut cycles on his own before needing to explain to her why he wasn't asking her. "You're right, and I will eventually." Eventually being when they put mating marks on one another, because then he'd need to stop pushing it off. "Okay, I just pulled up. I'll talk to you later." They entered the call, and when Suguru was finished cooking, he went into the living room and turned on the television. He settled in and decided to spend the rest of the evening watching a drama that had finally finished airing.